We truly are literally talking about democracy versus, being able not to have democratic access to making sure that you are represented at all levels of government.
Yes, Rashida Tlaib. It's the fear-mongering of the left, and, I think they're happy that their chickens have come home to roost, don't you think? I've got news flying in over the transom. Rather a busy news day, I think it would be fair to say. Gigantic news just broke minutes ago. Judge Eileen Cannon has dismissed the President Trump classified documents case, saying that the appointment of Jack Smith as the special prosecutor, the special counsel by Biden's Department of Justice was unconstitutional. Something that the Trump people have been arguing for some time, and other conservatives have as well. But the left is a lynch mob, and they honestly, they just want to destroy their political enemies and seize power and then ruin America and make it unrecognizable, the fundamental transformation. Order granting motion to dismiss superseding indictment based on appointment clause violation. The legal document in front of me. Former President Trump's motion to dismiss indictment based on the unlawful appointment and funding of special counsel Jack Smith is granted. The word granted in all capital letters in this legal document, in accordance with this order. It's ECF number 326 because, it's a government document, so you got to have things like that in parentheses. The superseding indictment is dismissed. The indictment is dismissed. The case is dismissed because special counsel Jack Smith's appointment violates the appointment clause of the United States Constitution. So the Democrats don't care about the Constitution, as we know, or the Bill of Rights. They just care about revenge, right? And vengeance and punishing their political enemies and attacking their political enemies and seizing power. So it violates the appointments clause of the United States Constitution, U.S. Constitution, Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2. Special counsel Smith's use of a permanent, indefinite appropriation also violates the Appropriations Clause, U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7, but the court need not address the proper remedy for that funding violation, giving the dismissal on appointment clause grounds. The effect of this order is confined to this proceeding. So that's pretty amazing stuff. It's gigantic. It's huge. In New York, they convicted him with a Soros prosecutor and Soros radicals and a Democrat jury, guilty on all counts, 34 felony counts, based on a non-disclosure agreement and whether the paperwork was filed in the correct drawer or whether it should have been in a different drawer. Is that a personal expense or a campaign expense? Sure, 900 years in prison. The left is here, and they're anti-democratic, they're undemocratic, they're un-American. Yeah, this will be a good opportunity for the left to show that they've lowered the temperature, right? Because that's Joe Biden came out last night at the White House and gave a semi-coherent, rambling little speech about how he's the uniter or something, going around calling everybody Hitler. What a creep. Boy, oh boy, I'm telling you. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has already weighed in on the documents case being dismissed by the court. And AOC, who's a bartender at heart, not as smart as your average bartender, though. She's got a Twitter account, and Jake Tapper tweeted out, a senior House Democrat tells Axios, we've all resigned ourselves to a second Trump presidency. This is great. Second Trump presidency. That's Jake Tapper saying, a senior House Democrat tells Axios. It's all just a circle fest in a hot tub. Axios doesn't, Jake is doing their reporting or taking their reporting. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says, if you're a, quote, senior Democrat that feels this way, you should absolutely retire and make space for true leadership that refuses to resign themselves to fascism. See, she's dialed down the rhetoric. She's back to the she's the little fascist, little goose-stepping, and the, kind of kinky. She's one of the kinky Nazi, miniskirt Nazi things. This kind of leadership is functionally useless to the American people. Retire. It's fascism. See, she's fighting fascism. That's the old Russian playbook. Whatever they accuse you of is what they are guilty of themselves. Isn't that amazing? Yes, it is. So just a gigantic story. The Washington Post, very upset. Judge dismisses classified documents indictment against Trump in the Washington Post. And they're furious. They're grinding their teeth, scratching the desktop. Judge dismisses classified documents indictment against Trump. The federal judge overseeing the classified document charges against former President Trump has dismissed the indictment on the grounds that special counsel Jack Smith was improperly appointed, according to a new court filing Monday. U.S. District Judge Eileen M. Cannon's ruling is a remarkable win for Trump, whose lawyers have thrown long-shot arguments after long-shot arguments to dismiss the case. Well, it's unconstitutional, and it's not a long-shot argument. It was a correct argument, obviously. Other courts have rejected similar arguments to the one that he made in Florida about Smith's unlawful appointment. So the Washington Post, very angry. They should call people fascists, don't you think? So Cannon released a 93-page order, known for her brevity, I think. But the Washington Post typing up, upon careful study of the foundational challenges raised in the motion, the court is convinced that special counsel Smith's prosecution of this action breached two structural cornerstones of our constitutional scheme: the role of Congress in the appointment of constitutional officers, the special counsel, and the role of Congress in authorizing expenditures by law, Cannon concluded in her 93-page order. Now, that is a big deal, a huge win for President Trump. First, on Saturday, he survives an assassin's bullet, which clipped the side of his head and was this close to just say killing him, to creating a Zapruder film moment. Amazing, amazing things. Now, there are a couple of things I want to share with you that on Saturday, for example, the Washington Post, on Saturday, we get the Washington Post delivered to our home, and the headline, front page, lead story, upper right-hand corner, Saturday, July 13th, 2024, under the header of Election 2024, the big headline in their lead story, Washington Post, Saturday edition, Biden trains fire on Trump. Biden trains fire on Trump is the headline. New passion at Michigan rally aims to stem tide of calls asking him to leave race. And Yasmin Abdul Talib is the writer, and Cleve R. Wootson Jr. But Yasmin Abdul Talib with the headline, Biden trains fire on Trump. Later that day, President Trump was shot by someone who registered as a Republican, presumably to monkey wrench the election system, because the Democrats love to have Democrat, leftist, lunatic activists register as Republicans to vote as Republicans in primaries to tamper with the election. That's what they do. They do it all the time. So that was the front page of the Post on Saturday, and then later Saturday, President Trump was shot. Biden trains fire on Trump. Also, what was it that Joe Biden said just last week about putting Trump in the crosshairs? Because He was talking to his faithful, and honestly, the Democrat Party, the Bernie Sanders volunteer that showed up at a baseball field in Alexandria, Virginia, shot Congressman Steve Scalise, and wanted to murder the entire Republican baseball team. Biden threat, quote, to put Trump in a bullseye. That's what he said, put Trump in a bullseye, met with shrugs, in contrast to firestorm caused by Sarah Palin. Remember, Sarah Palin had an online map that had crosshairs on congressional districts across the country that were being targeted to defeat the Democrats. And then Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords was shot by a mentally ill lunatic, what was his name, Jared Loughner. And he actually murdered that day a Republican-appointed federal judge, and he wounded Congressman Gabrielle Giffords. The Democrat media didn't care about the Republican judge that was actually killed that day. They only cared about the Democrat congresswoman, but Jared Loughner was a George Bush-hating lunatic, and he was a certifiable nut. But if, his friend said, if you mention the name George Bush, he would just be trembling with rage and find himself in a fit of rage if he saw George Bush on the TV, and he shot Gabrielle Giffords. Never mind that, right? The lunatic that showed up outside Brett Kavanaugh's house after Chuck Schumer and so many others were threatening Supreme Court justices. Just amazing, amazing stuff. Now, there is something else that I want to share with you, because there is a history of political violence in the United States. The 1968 Democrat convention in Chicago, which may be recreated, who can say, in just next month when they go to Chicago. Now, President Trump, we were having fun on Saturday. President Trump was tweeting out. He tweeted on Saturday, maybe it was even Friday, Joe should immediately take a cognitive test, and I will go with him and take one also. For the first time, we'll be a team, said President Trump in a Truth Social posting, and do it for the good of the country. And he says, and from now on, all presidential candidates should be mandated to take a cognitive test and aptitude test regardless of their age, which is kind of fun, a little bit of fun. But when we're talking about political violence, look at, for example, the first ever Republican president was Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln was, of course, shot in the head and murdered by a Democrat who loved slavery, as so many Democrats did and kind of still do today. But he was killed by a Democrat, John Wilkes Booth, who was also an actor, just in case there's any question, any doubt about any of that. Being a Democrat, of course, he's a Democrat. And I'm amazed. I have this in my text threads, too, the Washington Post headline, which I photographed, and Michael just reminded me on Saturday morning. I got up and I photographed the front page of the Washington Post with their headline, Biden trains fire on Trump. And I sent it to Michael Piercy. And I said, what was the other one like this recently? And he said, probably the, put Trump in the bullseye. It's like, oh, yeah, that's right. At the bullseye. The Democrats, they're all about that. And I've got more on that coming up as well, because what President Lincoln, President Garfield, President McKinley, President Teddy Roosevelt, President Gerald Ford, President Ronald Reagan, and President Trump have in common. I'll explain that coming up. We're seeing surprising, amazing shifts in American political landscapes these days, and it's very important that we all be prepared. That means you too. The presidential race tightening up, getting crazier. You need to take action now to help protect your finances, regardless of who wins this year. That's where investing in precious metals comes in. Gold throughout all of human history has almost always been the most important hedge against economic and political uncertainty. And when it comes to gold, I recommend reaching out to my trusted friends at Advantage Gold. Here's what you do. You call 844, right? Call 844-368-9797. You're going to get a free 2024 gold and silver guide to get smart before you do anything. Plus, you mention this ad that you heard it here. You could qualify for a special $1,300 bonus. Now, make sure you take the steps you need to take to be smart to help keep your finances on solid ground as the political landscape turns into liquid. Call today, 844-368-9797. That's 844-368-9797. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. Yeah. All right. Lincoln, Garfield, McKinley, Teddy Roosevelt, Gerald Ford, Ronald Reagan, Donald Trump. What do they have in common? That is coming up. A lot going on today. Senator J.D. Vance at home in Ohio. It has been noted that security has enveloped his home, including ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, which, as everybody knows, alcohol, firearms, alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and explosives ought to be a convenience store and not a federal agency. Everybody knows. But ATF, bristling with weapons, and the Ohio State Highway Patrol have taken up positions at the home of Senator J.D. Vance. Does that mean that he's Trump's pick to be the VP running mate? Does that mean that, they're concerned about his safety and security for other reasons, because things are pretty weird in the United States right now, gotta say. But let me go to because this is pretty wackadoodle-doo. The first Republican president ever was, of course, Abraham Lincoln. Emancipation Proclamation, 13th Amendment, freed the slaves. Shot in the head at Ford's Theater, Washington, D.C., while seeing a play with his wife. Other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how did you enjoy the play? And it was a Democrat, John Wilkes Booth, who was bitter and angry, and he was an actor, sic semper tyrannis, and all that stuff. Abraham Lincoln, the first Republican president ever, shot and killed by an assassin who was a Democrat. And that should be frowned upon. Next up, I got to tell you, in 1881, then James Garfield, Republican president, was assassinated. Then in 1901, Republican President William McKinley was assassinated. In 1912, Teddy Roosevelt, former Republican president, was shot and wounded. Gerald Ford, while president, was shot at twice. President Trump has been vilified and demonized by Joe Biden and the Democrat Party to the point where the attempted assassination on Saturday, less than 48 hours ago, shouldn't really come as a surprise. Joe Biden tweeted out, "Americans want a president, not a dictator." A dictator. And he's Hitler. And he's a fascist. And AOC just used fascist this morning, attacking Republicans. Little fascist that she is. Whatever they call you is basically what they are. And Joe Biden and their TV ads, they've pulled their mean, nasty TV ads that are full of incendiary rhetoric that might get somebody hurt. And it's all good fun until somebody gets shot. And it's amazing that President Trump survived this attack by this cross voter. You think he was a cross dresser? It's kind of amazing that we had, I think we were trading texts, right, Michael? And I was with others, of course, on Saturday as well. Very busy texting day. And there was discussion. Why aren't they holding a press conference? Why don't we know anything about the gunman? And on and on. And I said, well, they're busy scrubbing his social media, which is one of the things that the federal government does these days. They slam the brakes on, don't release any information until they, the government, Mr. Charlie, the man, can dig into all the social media. And then, like when the cross-dressing transgender lunatic massacred people at the Christian school, Nashville, killed 6 people, suicide attack, that was another suicide attack. Saturday's attack was a suicide attack. The attack on Steve Scalise and Republican members of Congress was a suicide attack by a Democrat, a Bernie Sanders volunteer. Attacks on police in Dallas and Baton Rouge and in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill, suicide attacks. Attack on police officers, Ramos and Liu in New York, suicide attack. He then went and blew his brains out at a nearby subway stop. The Democrats have brought suicide attacks to American politics, and Joe Biden helped. Americans want a president, not a dictator. And they say, because when President Trump was talking to Sean Hannity on the Fox News channel, and Democrats were saying, you're going to be a dictator, you're going to be, and so Sean Hannity said, hey, the Democrats are saying you're going to be a dictator. You're going to be a dictator?
You are promising America tonight you would never abuse power as retribution against anybody.
Except for day one.
Except
Look,
for?
he's going crazy. Except for day one.
Meaning?
I want to close the border, and I want to drill.
That's
drill,
not that's not retribution.
Yeah, that's not retribution. That's that's pretty amazing. And still, Joe Biden of the Democrats are saying, oh, yeah, he said he's going to be a dictator. And the Whoopi Goldbergs of the world, are those mental cases at work yet? Those the View, because I'm sure they're having a meltdown. Oh, yeah, speaking of which, Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski had to take the day off today. The company told them to take the day off because the company knows, NBC fake news, corrupt news. They know that Joe and Mika and their guests, their little circle fest in a hot tub, that they're so hate-filled and so demented that NBC News doesn't trust them to behave responsibly on the air today, so they pulled them off the air. Isn't that amazing? I would say that's pretty amazing. You know, I sent a tweet out on Saturday, and it started as a text with Michael Piercy and Kevin and Randy, and I texted them at what time was it? It was pretty late. It was 10:33 p.m. on Saturday. Now that I look at it, I said if President Trump had bobbed his head slightly to the right at the wrong moment, today's video would look like the Zapruder film. I texted. And our democracy-saving Democrat neighbors would be celebrating in the streets, which, of course, means burning police cars and looting. And that's what I texted on our friendly thread. I was up till 1:30 a.m. I stayed up, much of the night on Saturday because, boy, things were happening, and I was very busy communicating with a lot of different people. But that's a fact, Jack. Now, again, President Lincoln assassinated by a Democrat, the first ever Republican president. Then Republican President Garfield shot in 1881, Republican president, and he was killed, shot in the shoulder and the back, and he actually was wounded and he died 2 months later, 1881. Then William McKinley, Republican president, was shot in Buffalo, New York during his second term at the Pan Am Expo and shot him in the stomach twice. McKinley reached out to shake his hand, you see, and he died a week later. McKinley, Republican president. Then Teddy Roosevelt was shot but survived. And this is kind of an amazing story. It's sort of like the Trump story. October 14th of 1912, and running for re-election. And Theodore Roosevelt, Republican, shot in the chest at a campaign rally where? In Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where the Republicans are today, where President Trump is today. And Teddy Roosevelt famously delivered the speech that he had planned to deliver to the crowd outside of the Gilpatrick Hotel before agreeing to seek medical help. He was shot in the chest. Now, he had a speech, folded up papers, and it was kind of like a book in his pocket. And the would-be assassin shot him in the chest. And Teddy Roosevelt practically walked it off. Amazing stuff. Gerald Ford was, of course, shot at twice by Squeaky Fromm, who was a member of the Manson gang. Democrats all, Charles Manson and Tex Watson. I actually met Tex Watson one time in prison. And then who was the other one? Sarah Jane Moore was the other one that took a shot at Gerald Ford, missing both times. 1981, Ronald Reagan was shot by John Hinckley. Now, Democrats can't wait to buy tickets to John Hinckley's guitar recitals, which never seem to come out. And he sells T-shirts, and Democrats can't wait to buy their John Hinckley T-shirts because the Democrat Party is kind of mentally ill. Now, in 1963, of course, John F. Kennedy, the only Democrat president that was shot and killed by a communist, though. Either that or by the CIA, but probably by a communist. And, of course, Bobby Kennedy in 1968, his younger brother, was shot and killed by Sirhan Sirhan, a Palestinian Christian. And that was at a hotel in Los Angeles, California, the night of the California primary. Sirhan Sirhan still in jail in California, in prison in California, but they did parole him last year. The parole board paroled Sirhan Sirhan last year. It's just that Gavin Newsom hasn't signed the paper to let him out yet. But, it was, and Sirhan Sirhan was angry that Bobby Kennedy was too pro-Israel. He was too pro-Israel, right? And now the Democrat Party doesn't have that problem. They're like Nazis. They're like, that's standard rhetoric. I'm just using Democrat Party rhetoric as they issue it. And, of course, Ronald Reagan shot in 1981, March 30th. I remember it well. I had just taken my girlfriend at the time to the dentist to have her wisdom teeth pulled. I think I've told that story here before, but I'm not going to tell it today. It takes too long. It's kind of a wacky story, though, sort of a fun story. I'll tell it another time. I'll tell it again another time. Yeah, so Lincoln, Republican. Garfield, Republican. McKinley, Republican. Teddy Roosevelt, shot but survived, Republican. Gerald Ford, shot at twice, survived. Ronald Reagan, shot and survived. Donald Trump, shot and survived. And then on the other hand, you got John F. Kennedy, who was shot and killed by a communist. Amazing, amazing things. Now, President Trump is in Milwaukee. He took his own private 757 to Milwaukee. I'm told that he had a white bandage on his right ear where he was shot by a Democrat who registered as a Republican for crossover voting purposes to monkey wrench the system. They train them to be anti-democratic, undemocratic, to target our system because, these guys are not on our side. And there were a lot of odd reports, the news media reporting all kinds of ridiculous things. When this happened, the Babylon Bee was making fun of the ridiculous headlines that were coming out on Saturday, and the Babylon Bee posted a fake headline, CNN, clumsy Trump hits head on bullet, because they were, the news media they were lying and putting out all kinds of ridiculous fake news, honestly. There are a lot of questions about the Secret Service and why this gunman was able to get into position in the first place. And these are legitimate questions. How did this 20-year-old lunatic who falsely registered as a Republican to monkey wrench the system and gave money as a 17-year-old to the left-wing fundraising group Act Blue? Who makes political donations when they're 17 years old? It was $15, but it speaks to intent. Right? And it's, that's supposed to be beer money or something. Yeah, I know, he's 17, but never mind that. Remarkable stuff. So, fake news media downplays Trump assassination attempt, claims he fell over after being startled by loud noises. These were among the headlines. And they were really ridiculous headlines all over the place. that you don't need the Babylon Bee, although the Babylon Bee people are funny. They're funny people. And it's funny, their fake headline mocking the news media on Saturday was funny. And you know, that funny matters, honestly, so let's keep that in mind. But a couple of the headlines that they put out. For example, the Washington Post, Trump leaves rally after loud noises erupt. That was their headline. He was just shot in the head by an assassin, trimmed, clipped him, just a flesh wound, a rifle bullet from what they're saying is an AR-15 style rifle. And if his head had just been tilted this way instead of that way, it's the Zapruder film. And the Washington Post lied. Trump leaves rally after loud noises erupt. CNN headline, Secret Service rushes Trump off stage after he falls at rally. That's the actual CNN headline on Saturday. Aren't they amazing? And then the headline came out, CNN getting crushed for headline after Donald Trump was shot at. And even there it says shot at. Well, the blood indicates that the bullet hit him. And then the news media, and they've pulled this one, Forbes magazine put out this headline. Will surviving gunfire be Donald Trump's next appeal to black voters? Not that they're racists or anything like that. Forbes magazine, that's an actual headline that is almost impossible to believe. And I saw about 10 minutes ago, actually, that they've pulled this story off the internet. And in fact, I have it here in our story sheet for the day, and I just clicked on it in the story. It doesn't go to the story. It just goes to a homepage for Forbes, where their headline now says, Trump says GOP convention speech will call for unity. And again, the headline we have here, and good thing we saved it here, will surviving gunfire be Donald Trump's next appeal to black voters? I got to tell you, man, the Spectator out of the UK, the headline is, today, comma, we're all MAGA. We're all MAGA. And ABC News, they've got this headline, suspect in Trump assassination attempt, and they didn't call it an assassination attempt for the longest time. Suspect in Trump assassination attempt had registered as Republican, but motive unknown. So their headline is that he had registered as a Republican because it must be political coverage, right? Loner and nice, complex portrait of gunman in Trump assassination attempt emerges. Thomas Matthew Crooks, 20 years old, allegedly used a gun purchased legally by his father. And 5 people at ABC typed this thing up. 24-year-old Pennsylvania man is suspected to be the gunman, the gunman who attempted to assassinate former President Trump on Saturday, firing several shots and killing at least one spectator, federal and local law enforcement agencies said. The FBI early on Sunday identified the suspect. Why did it take so long? Who was killed at the scene as Thomas Matthew Crooks of Bethel Park. Firefighter Corey Compatore, they're saying Compatore, a nice Italian name. A dad who was attending the rally was killed, and 2 other bystanders were injured. That makes it a mass shooting. 4 people were shot. And Corey Compatore, he firefighter, temporarily was the fire chief in his local community. He grabbed his family and used himself as a human shield when the shots started, and he was apparently shot in the head and killed by the Democrat registered as a Republican. And remarkable stuff. The FBI says they didn't have a motive. The ABC story that I read said, oh, yeah, he's a registered Republican. But they don't mention that he gave money to Act Blue, a left-wing fundraising group. Why would they mention that? You know, he registered as a Republican, and he shot Donald Trump. I don't think that he's a legitimate Republican. He gave money to Act Blue. I don't think he's a legitimate Republican. The Democrats have staged these crossover efforts, organized efforts to unseat pro-Trump candidates and to seat radical left candidates. That I'm going to go ahead and bet $1 right now that's why this creep registered as a Republican, because the Democrats like to mess with our democratic institutions. And they raised this guy to hate Trump because he's Hitler. He's a tyrant. He's a dictator. He's going to take away your rights. He's going to arrest and kill your children. He didn't have children yet, but other people's children. And President Trump's speech. He put out a statement on what his speech is going to be like on Thursday night at the convention in Milwaukee. That's coming up. I'm going to get to the audio of what actually happened in real time, and President Trump has done an interview. I'm going to share that with you. And MSDNC and the media have got a lot. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to Gene, calling from Youngstown, Ohio. Gene, you are on the Chris Plant Show.
Hi, Chris. How you doing?
I'm great, Gene.
I was at the rally on Saturday. I was really looking forward to it. I knew it was going to be hot. I'm not a young man. I'm 77. I'm as old as Trump, but I've been to 15 rallies. And I was taking 2 people with me that had never been to one before, and I was looking forward to that. We stood in the hot sun, and finally Trump came on. He was supposed to come on at 5. He actually didn't come on until 6. And about 10 minutes, and hear pop, pop, pop. I thought I heard 3 different pops, and then what sounded like automatic fire, like from the snipers. But we all hit the ground, and everybody was, there wasn't any screamers. There wasn't any of our people that, panicked and ran. We all hit the ground, and then we all came back up when we heard that Trump was okay, and, his fist up there. Can I say something? That picture would have never came off if it wasn't for us, because that flag curled itself between those 2 cranes.
I'll tell you what, Gene, if you could hang in there for a couple of minutes, I'd like to talk to you some more.